Hey filmmakers, Nick with August Sun Productions here. If you want to become a video editor, film editor, or you just like to edit your own projects, Adobe Premiere Pro is an industry standard for both film and video. In this video series, I'm going to teach you how to become a proficient Premiere Pro editor. Before we start, you'll need some footage to import. You could use anything, stock footage or your own. It doesn't matter what's in the footage, but I do suggest using about 3 to 5 videos of your choosing and having at least one video with sound. Down in the description, I'll leave a link to a free website where you could download stock footage to practice with. Now, grab a pen and take notes because your editing journey begins now. Alright, let's dive right in. So let's open up Premiere Pro. Click on New Project. And let's give our project a name. So I'm going to give it the name August Sun Productions Makes Awesome Videos. Subscribe. Actually, let's take out subscribe. So I think it's a pretty cool name, but you don't have to give it the same name, but I think it's a pretty cool name, but maybe I'm biased. And down here we have location. So this basically just means where do you want to save the Premiere Pro project file on your computer or external hard drive, which in my case is an external hard drive. And if you go down here, you'll see this box and it says skip import mode. But we actually want to leave that unchecked because I actually want to show you import mode. So let's click create. All right, so you can see here, this is where my footage is. So if you don't have your footage pop up automatically like I did, you'll go to wherever you keep your footage. Let's say you put it in your desktop, you'll click on desktop and you'll get your footage there. So I want to import not one, but maybe 3 clips. So I'll do this, I'll click on that, and then shift select the 3rd clip here, and I'll make sure they're all highlighted. And once they are, you can go down and say import. Okay, so now that we're in Premiere Pro, I want to talk about keyboard shortcuts because I'm going to be mentioning different keyboard shortcuts throughout the video and telling you what they do. But just in case you want to actually see all of them in one place, you could actually do that within Premiere Pro. So we'll go up here to Premiere Pro and keyboard shortcuts. And as you can see here, we have a bunch of them. So you could just take a screenshot or just follow along. Now let's go over Workspaces. So what are Workspaces exactly? Well, instead of explaining it, let me actually show you. So if you go up to Window Workspaces, you can see we're on the Effects workspace. And as you can see over here, we have this Effects panel, which gives you a bunch of different effects you could use. And if I go here to Window Workspaces Color, you could see I have some color adjustment scopes here. And we have color adjustment sliders here. And if I go here, I could actually change the temperature of the image. So I can make this cooler or warmer and then double click and that resets it. So let's say I make a bunch of different adjustments, but I want to change all of them, but I don't want to have to go around and double click each one of them like so tediously. Instead, I could do all these adjustments and go up here. See this button here? Reset effect. It resets everything for you. All right, let's go back to Window Workspaces and let's click on the Editing workspace. Now let's go over all these different panels here. So we have the timeline, which is basically just where your project is edited. And you could see the edited product in the program monitor. And then here we have the project panel. And if I go down here, click this bin, that's where our footage is. It automatically just created for us a bin for the footage. And I don't know if you noticed this, but as you can see, we already have the clips here. So we didn't actually put any clips on the timeline. it seems that it already created a sequence automatically for us. So it automatically just put all the files that we imported as footage into a timeline. Now let's drop this down. I want to show you the difference between a sequence and your clips. You go down here, and this is all of our footage here. So this shows the audio and sound, and this shows that this clip here, if I double click it, it brings it up on the source monitor, and you can see here it just has video. So there's no sound on this clip whatsoever. So it just has this little icon, but this one has video and sound. And if you go down here and look at our sequence, which is what's on the timeline here, sequence 01, sequence 01, this has a different symbol here. This is a sequence symbol. And also, if you take a look over here, we could see the frame rate, and we could see the media start, media end. Scroll down here, and we could see a bunch of other different metadata about the clip, like resolution. So now that you know the difference between a sequence and a clip, I'm actually going to delete this sequence so we could start fresh. So we could right-click and click on Cut. And now we have no more sequences, just our footage. So let's talk more about our project panel. So let's make sure that it is active, selected by this blue highlight here, and press the tilde key on your keyboard, and that makes it full screen. So like I said before, we could see information about our clip like the frame rate and resolution, and that's because we're in list view. So if you go down here, you could actually see, hover your mouse over this icon, and it says list view. So let's say we want to make a different view. We want to make it the icon view. So I'll go over here, and we have icon view. So icon view is really cool because it actually allows us to hover our mouses over the clips, and we could actually see all the frames inside the clip. So we could scrub over here and over this. We could rewind, go forward. Really cool stuff. And if you want to make this a bit bigger, you could actually go down here, click and drag, and you could see it better. Now let's go to Freeform View. Go over here, click Freeform View. And this is very similar to icon view. You could do the exact same thing. You could hover your mouse over it and go through all the frames. But what it's also cool about this view is that if you want to reorder these clips and kind of pre-visualize how you want to do the final edit, you could actually rearrange them. You can go here, and let's say you want the tree to come before the auditorium. And let's say you want to change it again, you could do that too. You could rearrange this. So this kind of creates for us our own little storyboard before we even start editing, which is pretty neat. Let's go back to icon view. Okay, so as you saw before, we actually have these clips, all of our footage, in a bin. And you could tell because you can go to this little button here. That'll bring you back to your main page on the project panel, and you could see 3 items in the bin. Double click, and these are the 3 items. But let's say we want to further organize our clips. So I'm going to create a new bin by right-clicking and clicking on New Bin. And you could also make sure you select here so you don't create a bin inside a bin. So click here and then go to this little icon down here and click on New Bin. And we've created a second bin. So we can rename this by right-clicking, rename, and then I'll name this bin drone footage. And then I'll go here, right-click, and rename, and I'll name this theater footage. Okay, so now I'm going to shift select these 2 and drag them into the theater footage bin. And then I'm going to take this, click and drag this into the drone footage bin. Now to import more footage, we could actually just double click on the screen here. And you can see it brought up this tab here. We could actually pick the footage we want to add in. So I'm going to add some more footage. I'm going to add in these 2 pirate ship shots and then import. And then I'm going to click and drag these into the theater footage bin. So now I have 4 items. Now let's press the tilde key to exit full screen. And now we have a full view of all our panels again. So right now we have no sequences, and that's because we deleted the sequence that Premiere Pro created for us when we imported our footage. But to create a new sequence, you could do one of the following. You can go down here to the New Item button, click on that, and click Sequence, and you could actually pick the settings. So let's say you want it to be 1080p at 23.976 frames per second, which is basically 24 frames per second. You could click that, and you could give it a name. So you could say My Sequence, and then click on OK. And it just created for you a new sequence. But actually, we're going to do something different. So let's Command Z or Control Z on a Windows to undo that. So instead of creating a new sequence, we could actually make a new sequence by dragging footage from the source monitor or the project panel onto our timeline. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's double click on drone footage. Click on this. And you could see here we have the playhead, this blue little arrow thing. And we could drag it, click and drag to fast forward, rewind, whatever you want to do. But there's also another way to do this. You can go J to go backwards in time, K to pause, L to go forward in time. And if you double click or triple click the J key, you can go back faster, K to pause, and then to go forward in time, click on L a couple of times to make it go fast. And then you could also press play with the spacebar, or pause with the spacebar as well. So now that we could navigate through our clip with JKL, let's rewind with J. And let's say we want to start right here. So I'm going to press the I key. The I key in the keyboard stands for the in point. So press that, and you've just created an in point. And then press the spacebar to play through, L to make it go a little bit faster, and then K to pause. And let's say we want to end it right there. So I'm going to click on the O key again for the out point. And you could do different things to bring it onto the timeline. You could either click and drag here, which will bring the audio and video on, but this clip doesn't actually have any audio, and you could tell that because if you go here, drag audio only, it's grayed out, so there's no audio there. But you could also click and drag to make just the video go on as well, but because there's no audio again, we don't need to worry about that. But let's say we had a clip with audio. How would that look? So let's go back in the folder here. Let's click on theater footage. And then I'm going to go here and let's click on I and then press L to go forward in time. And then press O, create an out point. So instead of dragging video only here, and then you only see the video, no audio is playing. Instead of that, what you could do is Command Z or Control Z if you're in a Windows, and go to drag audio only. And it just drags the audio from that clip. Command Z to undo that. Now I want to point out something else. So the first clip we brought into this timeline is this drone shot. Now this drone shot is not in 24 frames per second. It's in 60 frames per second because it's meant to be slowed down and put in slow motion. So what happens when we put one frame on our clip that is 60 frames per second, and then another clip that's 24 frames per second, which is this footage here, click and drag. And so we have to figure out, is this sequence here on the timeline, is it set up to be 60 frames per second or 24 frames per second? And the way to find that out is to go up here to Sequence Settings, and here you see it's 59.94, which is basically 60 frames per second, and it's 4K, 16:9 aspect ratio. Let's say you want to change that. Let's say you want to make it 24 frames per second. You could actually go here and do that, but I wouldn't recommend doing anything like that because that makes it a bit choppy. You don't want that look. So let's cancel that. And actually, let's find this sequence in the project panel. So I'm going to go back here to our main area. And you can see here by this icon, that's the sequence icon, not the clip. So we can go here, right click, and cut that sequence. So let's say we want the drone shot in the same timeline as this clip here, but we don't want it to be 60 frames per second sequence. We want it to be a 24 frame per second sequence. So we can actually do that. We can go here, click and drag this clip onto the timeline, and look at sequence settings. You can see it's almost 24 frames per second, and cancel that out. So you're probably thinking, how do you add a 60 frames per second clip onto a 24 frame per second timeline without it being choppy? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. You go to the bin, drone footage, and you can see here we have our 60 frame per second clip. I'm going to right click on that, go to modify, interpret footage, and it says here use frame rate from file. We don't want to do that. We want to click here and assume 23.976 frames per second. And once you do that, you'll see it's now in slow motion. And it actually does mess with the in and out points you already set because it's slowing everything down. So you want to look through it again and just find your in point. So let's say you want to start there. Click O and make the out point. And now we can actually bring this clip onto the timeline. And it won't be an issue anymore because it's been adapted to be 23.976 frames per second. So in case it wasn't clear before, the first clip you bring onto your timeline, the settings of that clip, so let's say that this clip is 24 frames per second, then the sequence becomes 24 frames per second because that was the setting of the first clip you brought on. Now, before we modified this to 24 frames per second, it was 60 frames per second. So if I had dragged this on first when it was 60 frames per second, the sequence would have been set to 60 frames per second. But of course, we want it to be a 24 frame per second timeline because converting 60 frames per second to 24 frames per second is great if you want to do a slow motion effect, which we have here. So you're probably wondering, what's the deal with all these different sequences? I just want to make a short film. I want to make one video. So in that case, you do have to pick one sequence to export for that one video or that one film. But that doesn't mean you can't make a bunch of sequences that you then put into one timeline. But the key is that you have to put it all together at the end of your edit to export it for your final export. So you do want to make sure that the settings are uniform for all the sequences if you want to put it into the same project. But we'll talk more about sequences in a later chapter of this video series. So I want to add another part of this drone shot to my timeline. So I'm going to have this in point here, set an out point. And instead of physically dragging the clip onto the timeline, you could actually do something different. And pay attention to this little thing here. This is called the playhead. The position of this playhead on your timeline is extremely important. And I'll show you why. So let's use two different keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to click on the period on my keyboard. That is the overwrite button. So basically took the length of all this, and instead of pushing it to the side, this clip to the side to make room, it basically just overwrites it and cuts the second part of this clip out to make room for this. So I'm going to Command Z to undo that. And let's press another key. Let's do the comma key, which is the insert function. So what that does, it still cuts it, but it doesn't totally get rid of the second part of this clip. It just inserts itself between it. And now we have two of these sandwiched between this, and then we have our last clip here. Let's Command Z again. What if we brought it to the beginning? And remember, the playhead is very important in this case. Bring it to the very beginning, and then do insert, and it pushes it to the side again. Command Z, overwrite, and it cuts it out again. Command Z. Now let's go even further. So as you can see here, there's V1, and we have our tracks above it, V2, V3. Well, this one next to it, on the left of V1, also says V1. So when you use this is for something called source patching, which is also very useful because if you noticed when we were inserting and overwriting, this was down here, this icon. But if we click here to the V2 track and we want to put, let's say, the new clip above it, we can insert, which is actually, we don't want to do that. So Command Z, we actually do want to overwrite it because it's not going to affect this track here. It's only going to be on top of it. So it actually won't cut anything out. So I'm going to click on this, period to overwrite. And you could see it doesn't get rid of it, but it's over it. I'm going to click and drag here to shorten this. And you can see it's just an insert shot above it. I'm going to Command Z to undo everything. And if you want to go to track 3, you could do that as well. You can go up here, click V1 on track 3, and then do a period to insert, and then shorten it a bit. And now it's on this track. So I'm going to Command Z, and I'm going to bring the track back to track 1, and that is called source patching. Now finally, let's delete our sequence so we could start fresh for part 2 of this tutorial series. Let's go back to our main project folder, and here we have our sequence. Right click, cut, and you can see it's deleted on the timeline. So now that we get all the basic stuff out of the way, we have the layout of Premiere Pro and how to organize your files. Part 2 is where the fun begins. So stay tuned next week for part 2 of this tutorial series. Until next time.